Hello. Thank you for listening. I wanted to talk today about the twin flame dynamic and what's going on with the energies from this last full moon. So this last full moon was kind of a doozy. It really brought up a lot of stuff. It has a lot to do with Venus in retrograde and like where she is in that journey. Really asking us to go deep and purge out a lot of the stuff, because in truth, in order for us to ascend to the next level of vibration, all of those old programs that we have had installed and that we have been running off of, they all have to be removed. So this last full moon really went in and started breaking down those programs. And when that happens, you're going to have a lot of old stuff coming up. For me personally, even having memories of stuff that it was so long ago, I'm why is this even coming up? Out of nowhere, these memories and this stuff just comes kind of bubbling up. We have to try to emotionally disconnect from that, because what's happening is it's just breaking up and releasing, and as it's bubbling up to the surface and coming out and just kind of getting released, we're feeling the echo of that, and we have to not reintegrate it, if that makes sense. We have to just kind of observe it, we're sitting back eating popcorn and just that was an interesting time. We have to be very look at it from the perspective of spirit instead of as that person that was hurt, and instead of going back and re-feeling that suffering, we need to look at it from that higher perspective and just say, okay, that was an interesting experience. Trying to see okay, I can see why that happened because I'm in this position now and this is much better, so trying to just really have a completely objective perspective when we see this stuff come up, because we really don't want to feel into it emotionally, because that's just going to continue to strengthen those neural pathways for those memories and for those thoughts and for those reactions that we have because of that. And we really the body is trying to release it. That's really what's going on with these energies. It's saying it's time to get this up, it's time to get it out. So try to just allow that. Try to just have that objective perspective and just say, okay, all right, I see this. And even what you can do is, instead of getting really attached to it, what I actually was shown is, I don't know what kind of phone everybody has, but I personally use an iPhone, and I know when I use an iPhone, if I double tap the home button, it'll open up all the programs that are open, and then I can just swipe up any of the ones that I want to close. And so what I was actually kind of shown is mentally doing that. So something comes up and I'm okay, I see that, but then I'm you know what? I don't want that program open anymore. I don't want that anymore. So mentally it was just swipe up and just send it off into the abyss, really, and just close that program down. Mentally, you're kind of telling your brain I'm shutting down this program because it no longer serves me. I just don't need it anymore for anything. It's just not benefiting me for what I want to do and for what I want to achieve at this point forward, because in the past we just didn't know better. When we know better, we do better. So now as we're awakening, we know better, so we're doing better. We're instead of going into that space and reliving that and letting it get us down, we're saying, you know what, that was an experience I needed. I chose to have for whatever reason. Not the greatest experience, but now from a higher perspective, I can accept this and say, okay, but now I don't need that vibration anymore. I don't need that in my awareness or in my experience anymore, because now I'm ready to move to the next level. I'm ready to move on from this. So mentally closing that program will be something that will be very helpful, because if it comes back up, that's when you just do it again. You're just no, I already closed this. And that's just what you keep doing, be completely detached from it. So with this this stuff coming up, though, it's causing some issues with twin flame dynamics. So if you're not a twin flame, this, you could still apply this because it's going to break stuff up in any relationship. But a lot of twin flames right now are in separation. And what's happening is the stuff that's coming up or that's being shown to us and that's being triggered to come up, it's causing some resentment towards twin flames. So it's really kind of bringing up like feelings of betrayal, like, how could you do this to me? How could you leave me alone in this situation? Like, why can't you just get your stuff straight so that we could be together? A lot of those kinds of feelings. And the truth of the matter is if we're still having those feelings come up, then we're not in a place to be in union with our twin. Like, we haven't gotten to the level that we need to be in union, because if we were in a level of full collective consciousness and unconditional love, like, those feelings wouldn't come up. So all that is showing us is that there's still some work to be done, and that's okay. The work never ends, right? Well, even after union happens, there's still going to be work that happens together that's going to level up for the collective. So it's like right now we're in this place of, I need to do this work for myself, and then once I get to a level where I could be in union with my twin, then the work we do together is going to help the collective, even though the work that you're doing singularly is still helping the collective as well. But it's easier to just kind of look at it in that perspective, like, okay, I have to get myself in the right place before I can help anyone else. It's kind of like when Jesus used that parable and said, people focus on the speck of dust in their neighbor's eye and not the log in their own. So it's like we've got to take care of the log in our eye before we can really help anybody else get the speck out. It's kind of that perspective. So what the message is with this, and the recommendation is with this, really, when we're holding resentment against our twin, when we understand the collective perspective and the fact that, like, we are all one and we are all the same energy, just having different physical experiences, we really have to turn inward and accept the fact that, like, when we're holding resentment towards our twin especially, we're actually resenting ourselves. So I'll repeat that. When we are feeling resentment towards our twin, we are actually resenting ourselves. So what this is showing us is that we still have to forgive ourselves for some stuff. Like, there are still some things that are happening in our life because of choices that we have made, that even though we are exactly where we're supposed to be, we're still in a place of ego where we're still frustrated thinking, but this isn't what I want. This isn't exactly what I had wanted. This isn't exactly how I wish this had played out. And so there is resentment there, really towards ourself. And with that, we have to come to terms with that. And we have to understand, like, one, we have to forgive ourselves. Like, we have to forgive ourselves. We were operating in a place where we were not awake. We were operating in a place where, probably from fear and pain, that maybe we still have consequences from that decision, years down the road. But the fact of the matter is, we're exactly where we're supposed to be in our journey. So the forgiveness needs to come from even worrying about that. Like, even thinking, like, this is wrong or this is right. There is no wrong or right when you're understanding this perspective. It just is. So we create a lot of that suffering for ourselves by labeling a situation. So, like, by labeling a circumstance and saying, well, because this isn't this way, I'm going to feel feel pain and suffering because of it. It's not because that situation is right or wrong. It's because we are making a choice to think that it's wrong, if that makes sense. So instead, we have to come from a position of higher consciousness and look at it and say, okay, whatever is happening in this situation is meant to serve the highest good for the collective, for, the unity consciousness. And it's really not my place to try to control anything. It's not my place to try to manipulate circumstances and try to control circumstances so that they happen the way that I think that they should happen, because that's a lot of ego. That's a lot of ego in those thoughts when we think, I know better. Even though this is the way that this happened, because this is what was allowed to happen, because it's for the greater good, for the long run, I believe that I know what was better. And it should have been done that way. And because it wasn't, now I'm going to X, Y, Z. We're going to pout about it. We're going to feel resentment about it. We're going to be frustrated about it. We're going to allow it to hold us back from our soul purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have to get into that space where we're saying, okay, I have no idea really the long-term effect of why this happened, but I have to stay in trust and know that there's more to this story. There's more to the story. I've jumped in and I'm reading, chapter 2, and there's 20 chapters in this story. So we have to just understand that we really don't know best, only for the sheer fact that we still are in ego a lot. And until we could get into that place of acceptance and trust and knowing that, we are going to come into union when it's the right time, when we're supposed to, because that was the whole point. The whole point was for all twin flames to come into union. So it's funny when I think about it this way. I think about it this way for myself. So I'm not saying this like, how dare you think this? I'm just saying like, this is how I've actually looked at this and thought, wow, how arrogant of you to think that you could stop that. Like that you could stop what was destined and that has been orchestrated for so long and that was designed before you even incarnated here. Like that is so arrogant and self-centered to think that you have that power. Like, it's almost silly. Like, when I think about it, it's like, wow, that is the most ridiculous thing, because this is something that is supposed to happen. Like, it's ordained, it's destined. So sitting there and being like, oh, but I have the power to stop it, like, no, not really. So we really have to like try to get out of our own way with that stuff, because that's really what is kind of slowing down the process, is that need for trying to like control it or think, oh, if it doesn't happen in this way, then that's wrong, or whatever. We have to come from our perspective and understand that like, okay, this is something that's supposed to happen. This is something that is going to happen. So I need to just do what I'm being shown to do and what I'm being called to do, and trust and just know that this is being worked on behind the scenes. It's going on behind the veil. And, by me just doing what I've been told to do, and by focusing on doing that, like, that's how it happens. Like, that's how it's supposed to go. Because a lot of people right now are in resistance, a lot of fear with what they're being shown or asked to do by spirit, and they're like, I don't want to do that. They're still wanting to kind of hide. They're still wanting to really not shine that bright. They're kind of afraid, because probably the programming and the experiences all through childhood, a lot of people that are in a position for awakening, like, they were different as kids, and they never felt like they were part of anything. They never felt like they were included. They always felt like they were rejected or the oddball. And so now as adults, being asked to do something that we feel is going to make us more like that again, like it's hurtful. It's hard to stomach it, because we're like, man, I know what it feels like to be isolated. I know what it feels like to be thought that I'm like some kind of freak or a weirdo for who I am. And now you're asking me to like put it all out there for people. Like, man, I don't know how to do that. I don't feel like I can do that, because it literally feels painful. Like, it's scary to do that. But the more that we resist it, the more we're going to feel the pressure, I guess. It's kind of like if you think about like a woman going into labor. We have a whole community of people that are, if you think about it in the way of like spiritually pregnant, like there are tasks that people have been asked to birth, to give life to. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's already been put into motion, and like it's coming, like quote unquote, the baby is coming. So we can't really fight it. And we could feel the pressure, like we could feel like it's coming. And the more that we fight it, it's almost like we're just making it harder for ourselves, instead of just trusting that Spirit is going to show us what we're supposed to do, is going to provide the information that we need, and it's going to support us. We're still thinking, oh, but I have to do this on my own. It's still going into that ego part of where it's like, thinking like I have to do this alone, one, which is not trusting Spirit, but then it's two, like it's ego and kind of full of ourselves to be like, oh, I'm going to do this alone. Like, no, no, we're just the messenger, really. And once we get into alignment with it, like the information is really going to flow, that needs to be shared. So it's definitely been an interesting full moon. Things are just, they're speeding up. The pressure's getting bigger. It's like more people are feeling the moon energy and feeling this kind of stuff. Like, people that aren't even really fully awake and aware, like they're still starting to feel the moon and feel the energy and feeling these shifts, and they're like, what the heck is going on? Like they don't know, they don't understand. And that's one of the reasons why those of us that are awake and aware are being asked to like put ourselves out there and put this information out there, because people need it. Like they need it. They need to understand. Think about it. How hard was it before you found out the truth about what was going on, when you're like, I'm going crazy. Like, I don't understand. Like, why do I keep having body aches when the new moon comes? Or why do I keep having body aches? Or like feeling like I have the flu every full moon, or like what, like what's happening to me? I don't understand. And, it's something that a lot of people, like they're suffering in silence alone, because they have no idea what's happening. So by us sharing what we know and by putting it out there, more and more people are going to be able to find the information that they need, and it's going to help a lot of people, and it will also speed up the process for the collective. So that's why the pressure, like feeling this pressure of like, I've got to move, I've got to do this, I've got to, and that's why there's so much like tension too, because when we're not doing what our soul is here to do, we feel that disconnect, we feel that depression, we feel that anxiety, we feel it in that way. Like we're feeling like we're not in alignment with our true self, because like there is that disconnect. There's like feeling lost, because we really are. It's like we're trying to shut off from source, from Spirit, because we're trying to resist what we're supposed to be doing. And by doing that, it really creates a lot of emotional distress and a lot of emotional imbalance in the body. So the recommendation really is to not fight it, to just say, okay, like let's just do this, because I feel very strongly that if you just start, then you're going to feel better. Like, you're going to feel the energy lift off of you. You're going to feel like you can breathe better. You're going to feel, you know, like it's just going to be like, oh, okay. Like, I feel better. So, try to just release what's coming up. Don't get emotionally attached to it. But I feel like really the message of a lot of this, like with this full moon and the worthiness issues that are coming up, I know that's been like a huge thing with a lot of people reporting worthiness, feeling worthy, feeling good enough. That's been a huge, huge thing. So that has a lot to do also with the twin flame dynamic, is like feeling good enough for that relationship. Feeling worthy enough to experience something like that. So try to forgive yourself. Try to do some work where you can forgive yourself and release the resentment from yourself. Because it's very interesting when we look at that perspective and we can really see like, wow, when I feel this resentment towards that person, like I really am resenting myself. And what am I resenting myself for? Like, what am I feeling right now that they mirrored back for me that I need to heal, that I need to come to terms with and let go of? And just utilize that. Use that to grow, instead of it being used like to feel suffering. Because that's really what the difference is. Like, when this stuff comes up, we have to look at it and say, okay, what is this showing me that I need to heal? Or we sit there and this stuff comes up and we say, oh, I'm going to suffer under this again. Like, those are really our two choices. And right now we're really being asked to go ahead and just heal it and let it go and move on. Because once that's gone, we can raise up in vibration to where we're supposed to be and needing to be, especially to be in alignment with twin flame union. So I hope that this was helpful, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.